So for my final task, I filmed a horror movie, and it was kind of a take on murder mystery while exciting things happened to one of the characters and interesting things was going on with the other one. I kind of wanted to do horror. It's a really interesting genre for films. It's one that I really enjoy, and I think that I did it well. And for my final task, I used conventions that were normally found in horror films. You know, the dark, dim lighting. We used different colors in the scenes. We would change, do black and gray to kind of create like the dark and suspenseful theme. We added lots of horror music. We added suspense music. We added the horror music of when somebody's getting killed. We added sounds and background effects that were often found in horror movies. And we also did like we used a lot of camera angles and movements that were found in horror movies, lots of close-ups. The whole gimmick of the movie was that we didn't want anybody to know who the killer actually was, and we left hints and clues for people to guess. And with the hints and clues, we used different camera movements and camera angles to convey this. We are really approaching social groups of horror movie lovers with the way we portrayed this. Anybody who's interested in horror movies, who watches them, would like this because it's for them. And we didn't really attack any specific social issues. We didn't have anything that we were trying to specifically go after, but we did once again just try to appeal to the horror movie lovers, and we just tried to do our best to speak about that. So for the second question, our film was a horror movie once again, and it would engage with our audiences because we are trying to address the horror movie theme. It is about the action, the suspense, the curiosity, wanting to know who did it, the motives behind it. We wanted to create more so of the horror movie and the killing. It was really specifically about the backstory. We wanted to let people understand, the motives as to why the murderers do what they do, why they wanted to do the killing. And I think that was just as equally important to us as was the actual killing scene. And we did the whole cover up, the getaway. We made like the entire substance of the movie just within the 2 minutes that we were allowed. And we would approach this to our audience because they would relate to this. And seeing an entire horror movie, it would include, from beginning, middle to end, it would all be summed down to what our final task was, the opening scene. And we would probably display this, since it would be a film, and it would probably be displayed through social media, Instagram, and any popular forms. For Instagrams, the characters would probably promote that on their accounts for any form of social media that they did have. And we could also promote it on TV. Advertisements is like the biggest way that people promote films online in this generation and time. We would probably have campaigns, maybe a poster where it would be popular for people to see, a billboard, just to kind of get the anticipation and excitement for the movie to come along. And we would probably put it out in such ways. For my third question, my specific developing throughout the project has changed from beginning to end. We have been doing multiple projects throughout the entire year, and I feel as though I have definitely progressed, and I made sure of it. I continuously spoke about in my blogs the importance of making sure that I showed all characteristics of the things that I was learning in my media class, and I made it of importance that I presented that in these films because it's really important. It's going to be viewed by Cambridge. It's a big portion of our final grade, and it was just really important that it was shown throughout the film. And I think I could say throughout the project I kind of started off not really knowing where it was going to go, because it was more so just the planning. I had the whole idea, the way I wanted to carry it out, the way I wanted to film it, but when it's in person, things are a lot different because we don't really have access to so many tools and so many things, especially during this time. So it's really the way you want it, the way you envision it in your mind is not really the way that it always comes out on film. So I had that anticipation in my mind first, so I think that was beneficial in my planning because I have already done filming tasks. I knew that, okay, if you plan it out like this, don't necessarily ensure that it may come out like that when you film it, because you know how it goes. You know how it has gone within your past filming projects. So kind of try to create a really realistic idea in your head of how you want this to go, so that when it comes out, you're not frustrated and you're not really having a difficult time putting it all together. So I think I already started off stronger because I knew what to expect, as I've been doing this for an entire year. I could say that when it came to the filming, my filming processes have throughout the year been mostly the same, except this time I made sure to incorporate camera movements and camera angles, zooms, pans, tilts, the things that we've been learning throughout the year. I think I made sure it was important to include lots of them. Before, I think it was one here, one there. I definitely didn't use as much as I should have been throughout the year, but I made sure that I had enough so that I could present it and that it would be good and it would show diversity within the film. And I also think that when it came to the editing, it was by far one of the best editings that I've done within my filming of this class. Before, I started out this class because I wanted to learn a little bit more about editing, and I never really knew how to edit, and I made that specifically clear and known throughout my blogs that editing is not my strong suit. It's not something that I'm very good at. I don't really know how to use editing apps. I don't really know how to create diversity and make it very make it very different and add things that make it seem like a horror movie, because once again, it wasn't more so just about what we were filming, but it was about what we added onto it that would make the filming and the editing just come together as one cohesive opening scene. And I think that it was important that I spoke about that because I didn't know how to do that before, but I feel like as I continuously used editing apps, I use the same editing app all year. I did use iMovie, and I feel like as I have used it before, I was like, okay, within the first film I didn't really know what I was doing, so I didn't really have much to put to it. The second time, you add a little bit more. Third time, you add a little bit more. But for the final scene, I was like, okay, I need to maybe use everything that this app has to offer, because I want to just create as much difference here and there as I can, because it needs to look different, and I need to show that I have progressed and that I have taken what I've learned, the criticism that I've received from my teachers, and bring it back into my future projects. And I think that I was able to achieve that with my final task. I think that I have developed, and I think I've learned a lot that I can take with me outside of this class, even when it comes to small, simple things, and that's what I was hoping to gain. For my last question, I did incorporate a sufficient amount of technology into this project. I think I have always used a sufficient amount of technology when it comes to this project compared to the other ones, but as far as it goes for my final task, it began with the research and what we were looking for in horror movies. I looked online. I took a lot from, some of my favorite horror movies that I've already known and watched. And I was like, okay, I have to bring all of this to my next movie. And most I think, we could say the biggest technology we incorporated was the editing app, and as far as filming using our phones. We're at a day and age where technology is really advanced, and the things that we use and the things that we are incorporating, they go a long way. Like with one little phone, you could film the whole thing, you can put it all together. You don't really need, if you have good lighting, if you have good sound behind you, you don't really have to do much. You just have to set it up, and it kind of just creates like a clear picture of everything around you, and it picks up on a lot of stuff. And I think that that's really beneficial because like I said, we're in a time where we can't really, go out, get a lot of things, do a lot of things. So if we have it, if, one thing is sufficient enough for us, then that goes a long way, because we were able to film our entire horror movie on one cellular device, whether it was mine or my partner's, and it was really useful. We incorporated editing apps. I used a different editing app than my partner. I explained how in my blogs how she took over kind of one part of the editing and I took over the other part. I was mostly in charge of doing background effects, doing background noises, sound effects, and adding music, changing color where it was needed, adjusting sound, making things more prominent and present, kind of just cleaning up loose ends. And I think that with the project, since I have developed more throughout my year of learning, I used iMovie to develop my project. And with iMovie, we were able to incorporate a lot of the tools we had learned. We used every single kind of like thing that they really had on the app, their voiceovers. They had their own background effects, because when we tried to add in a lot of our own music, it was like copyright issues. So they had a lot of music that we could have used on that app. They also had sound effects that were really useful, because we did some of our own, but some of them were a little difficult to achieve. Like more specifically, like we had a footstep sound, but it was really hard to recreate that, like to get the noise to be just as loud and almost make it sound like it was in real life. So we took the footsteps that were on iMovie, which made it a lot better. And I think that we were able to incorporate enough technology, and I think even so, the little bit did go a long way with what we used.